As another beautiful summer day begins at the Conway Scenic Railroad, former Canadian National locomotive 7470 moves out of the old Boston and Maine roundhouse, built in the early 1870s. Slowly guided by the conductor and engineer, number 7470 moves on to the turntable to begin yet another day of moving passengers through the Mount Washington Valley countryside between North Conway and Conway, New Hampshire. Repeating the same routine as it did when Conway Scenic Railroad first opened its doors in 1974. The fireman checks to be sure everything is in proper working order as the engineer moves the locomotive off the table. Slowly and surely, 7470 switches onto the main track to have the tender filled with water. Once this is done and the fire stoked, the locomotive backs down the grade just beyond the North Conway station where 7470 is exercised. sound of the steam whistle rebounds off the mountains as engine 7470 returns to the North Conway station to couple up to the passenger cars to begin the first trip of the day. Children, young folk, and old-timers alike are thrilled with the renewed spirit of the great American Iron Horse rumbling through the countryside, bringing to life a sense of adventure once left only to the pages of history books. In 1994, Conway Scenic Railroad began its 21st operating season and found itself on the threshold of its first major expansion. Just west of the North Conway station, the Conway branch connects with the abandoned tracks of the main Central Railroad mountain subdivision through Crawford Notch, a scenic mountain passage that hadn't seen a regular passenger train since 1958. In 1993, the state of New Hampshire took steps to purchase the line and sought proposals from various companies to rehabilitate and operate passenger train excursions. After a lengthy application process, Conway Scenic Railroad was selected to rehabilitate the trackage, provide the train, and operate the service. Brush crews began at Intervale Switch, cutting and chipping over 10 years of growth as they moved west into Bartlett Village. While the work of reopening the line to Bartlett was well underway in the fall of 1994, inspection crews from Conway Scenic Railroad were looking over the rail line through Crawford Notch. A number of problems were found on this section of the line that would require repair before this section of the Crawford Notch line could be returned to service. Soon, Conway Scenic Railroad's trains would be serving the communities between North Conway and Bretton Woods Fabian as they moved up and down the mountains through spectacular Crawford Notch. On September 1st, 1994, Conway Scenic Railroad received a green light from the state to begin reopening the long dormant rail line. On October 10th, the first of many carloads of new ties were distributed between the Intervale Switch and Bartlett Village. The track crew worked nearly every day until late November, inserting new ties and correcting other minor defects.
Yeah, okay, red car, right here beside me, please.
That's a pretty color.
Oh, sorry. Right there.
Yeah. Saturday, December 17th, 1994, dawned cloudy and cold as the official inaugural run to Bartlett departed North Conway Station at 10 a.m. As the first train moved west on the newly reopened tracks, a steady snow began to fall, creating a magical winter wonderland feeling for the inaugural run. In the spring of 1995, track crews continued to move west up the notch, rehabilitating track in preparation for the resumption of service to Crawford Notch Station. All structures were inspected, including the famed Frankenstein trestle and the Willie Brook Bridge. On August 26, 1995, a round-trip director's special ran between North Conway and Crawford Notch Station. An inaugural run took place on September 1st, 1995, celebrating the re-establishment of rail passenger service to Crawford Notch Station, New Hampshire.
Best I can do. There we go.
Crowds were plentiful all along the route, and the train was cheered at every accessible location along the way. old Bemis House, now the Notchland Inn, an old-time community band played on as the train made a brief stop. A truly festive occasion. Passengers were treated to a spectacular view from Frankenstein Trestle of Mount Washington in the distance. Places along the route, Crawford Notch took on a new appreciation as the train made its way to the Crawford Notch station at the top of the notch. Once the inaugural train arrived at the Crawford Notch station, a delicious chicken barbecue was enjoyed as part of the Top of the Notch festivities. Among the many congratulatory speeches was a proclamation from Governor Steve Merrill, read by Executive Counselor Ray Burden.
In honor of the inaugural run of the Crawford Notch line to Crawford Notch Station on September 1st, 1995, the legend of the railways continues with the return of service to Crawford Notch. This is a historic moment that brings a little history back to the Notch. And that's the citation from Governor Steve Merrill of the state of New Hampshire.
After lunch, the all aboard was announced, and the passengers boarded for the return trip back through the Notch, culminating a spectacular day. despite this beautiful day, winter was soon to vent its fury. In early November, the winter storms that are so historic throughout the White Mountains had Mother Nature challenging all the hard work of the Conway Scenic Railroad crews. With heavy rain and snowstorms, runoff and some major floods severely damaged several sections of track along the Crawford Notch line. Most significant was the washout and the loss of a bridge at Moores Brook. With the arrival of an early spring in 1996, work crews began to push west along the Crawford Notch line through lingering snow to begin repairs. Crawford Notch line was reopened on June 22nd, 1996. The spring of 1996 also saw another locomotive arrive at the Conway Scenic Railroad. Locomotive 15 Corporation purchased for lease to the Conway Scenic Railroad former Springfield Terminal number 27. a model GP7 diesel-electric locomotive for service system-wide. The GP7 unit, originally built as Main Central number 573, was removed from service and stored as surplus on March 15, 1996. Representatives of the Conway Scenic Railroad and Locomotive 15 Corporation inspected the locomotive at the Rigby Yard in South Portland, Maine on April 1st. Information received from various sources suggested that Main Central number 573 was probably the most frequently painted locomotive on the railroad, due in part to being the last locomotive fitted with a serviceable steam generator. The generator provided heat on inspection specials and passenger extras. This locomotive received a number of one-of-a-kind paint schemes during its colorful history and was briefly lettered for the Delaware and Hudson in 1984. Main Central number 573 is no stranger to North Conway, having operated as the trailing unit along with Main Central number 470 on the Operation Lifesaver train through Crawford Notch on September 26, 1983. A highlight of that trip was the backing of the train over the Conway Scenic Railroad line from Intervale, New Hampshire to North Conway, using the old Boston and Maine Conway branch tracks. July 1st, 1996, engine number 27 arrived at North Conway Yard and was placed in service on train number 11 from North Conway to Bartlett and return on July 6, 1996. One of engine number 573's duties is to power the Sunset Special dinner train. Food service is provided by Horse Feathers Restaurant. Passengers enjoy a delicious four-course meal as the spectacular scenery passes by and the sun slowly sets on the Mount Washington Valley. pleasant and always romantic train ride back into time. August 14, 1995, two new locomotives arrived at the Conway Scenic Railroad. Engines numbered 6505 and 6516 were purchased by the Locomotive 15 Corporation and leased to the Conway Scenic Railroad. Both engines were former Via Rail Canada Model FP9 diesel-electric locomotives. Only 86 FP9s were rebuilt by General Motors Diesel in London, Ontario between 1980 and 1981. The locomotives were received from Canada by way of Whitefield, New Hampshire. Scenic Railroad at number 6516 was placed in service on September 16, 1995 on the Crawford Notch train, and engine number 6505 entered full operational service on September 23, 1996. Additionally, 4 retired Canadian National Electric commuter coaches were added to the Conway Scenic Railroad. All 4 coaches were built in 1952 by Canadian Car and Foundry and were retired from the Montreal commuter pool in mid-1995. In August of 1996, the Conway Scenic Railroad hosted a reunion of the Evans family, whose lives are chronicled in the book, Life by the Tracks. Gordon and Raymond Evans are the 2 surviving members of 4 children who, along with their mother Hattie, lived in the Willard section house along the main central tracks located near the west end of Willybrook Bridge. As part of the reunion, Gordon, Raymond, and family members visited the old section house site and reminisced about old times.
We're standing here and looking at the foundation of the house. Where did you 2 boys have your room? Where was your room?
Right over the living room.
Or on that end?
And then, right.
In the round tower? It was pretty close to the railroad.
10 feet, I guess.
10 feet from the railroad. So you knew every moment that train was going by
That's right.
and coming.
After a while, we never noticed it, but
Yeah.
it know
At
to
the
go by.
time, at the time, you certainly did. And then if you wanted to walk, like when you boys worked at the Crawford House,
Yeah, right.
you would just walk to work up the railroad
Walk to
track?
And
My
we,
mother was riding.
we both caddied and we walked from here to the golf course.
The other side of the Crawford House.
Which is the other side of the Crawford House. It was a pretty good walk. It's about 1.5 miles to the Crawford House.
In
Or
the afternoon and evening, my mother would walk halfway up there and wait for us.
and wait for you to come out of work.
Yeah.
So just talk about a little bit the going to school. You went to school according to according to the training schedule.
That's right. First I started in Bartlett, and you didn't go to Bartlett, did you? Bartlett, and then
I
we went to
can't
Bemis.
remember going to Bartlett.
Then they took the morning train out, and they went over to Britton Woods, Twin Mountain. First went to Britton Woods, Fabians, then went to Twin Mountain
To school.
School.
Okay. And then when one of the trains went off, you went down to Bemis? Oh,
No,
that was the train that went off?
Yeah,
Okay.
the morning train.
Okay.
Because they used to have, years ago, they used to have passenger trains run every few hours. And they kept cutting down, the same as they do today.
And how did they stop as we just did right now and were let off? How did those passenger trains? They must have been pretty heavy.
Well, in the passenger train, to get on, they'd scoop us up one at a time. We'd be 25, 30 feet apart. And
Okay.
they'd scoop us up,
The conductor.
yeah, break one.
Okay.
Break one from.
Okay. So Grammy would space you
Go ahead.
out, standing along.
We'd know where to go anyway.
Yeah. And then if you turned around right now and the house is behind you, it's not very far away from the track. You didn't have much room up here.
No.
Porch was pretty direct.
Well, we
The
suffered.
porch was now
That chair is.
where one of those lawn chairs is. That's not very much space.
When they plowed it, snow would go up on the porch.
And they had steel grills
Yeah.
so the snow wouldn't break the glass.
What about you doing the night watchman? Is that what you did on the railroad?
We took our turns doing it, yeah.
Between
We'd
you
do
and
it
Raymond?
in the spring, they were afraid of slides, muds and rocks. And we had that choice of doing it, a volunteer deal, I guess. We get paid 55 cents for doing it. We would take that little push car and go way down to the end of the section, where the freight started from, and pump ahead of it up to Crawford Notch and go to bed. And we got an hour and a half paying for it. If the freight was late an hour, it was 2 hours and a half, we still got an hour and a half paid for it.
Okay.
That was before the union days.
That was before the union days.
We furnished our own uniform.
You're-
On September 1st, 1996, passenger service was extended west to Fabian Station from Crawford Notch. Passenger service now leaves North Conway, passes through Bartlett, and climbs through Crawford Notch, and begins a descent to Fabian Station, all in the shadow of Mount Washington. On this part of the Crawford Notch line, passengers can view the spectacular and historic Mount Washington Hotel. station served as the departure point for the Mount Washington Hotel and was also the connection to the Cog Railroad that climbs to the top of the 6,288-foot Mount Washington, the highest mountain in the Northeast. With the return of passenger service to Fabian Station, the Crawford Notch line covers almost 30 miles of track and climbs over 1,300 feet, thrilling passengers from all over the world with the trip of a lifetime. The incredible view of the White Mountains comes to life on the Conway Scenic Railroad in the fall with a splendid palette of fall foliage as the colors of fall paint Crawford Notch and the Mount Washington Valley brilliant reds, oranges, and yellows.